The warning. In 1977, something began hunting people on a remote Brazilian island called Colares. Not observing them, hunting them. The military was called in. They didn't just document what they found. They engaged in what would become one of the most terrifying military encounters ever recorded. This is what happened when the hunters became the hunted. This is Operation Saucer, Operação Prato, the night the military fought back against an unknown national security threat. But what they found in those 4 months would change everything. Classified documents, biological effects that denied explanation, a true story buried for decades, and someone would die to keep it secret. The Vampire Lights. Colares, Brazil sits where the Amazon River meets the Atlantic. 2,000 people, fishermen, farmers, no roads in, no roads out, just water and jungle. In 1977, something turned that island into a war zone. It started with the fishermen. They reported lights diving in and out of Morro Bay without making a splash, silent, fast. The lights would race across the sky, disappear into the jungle, then return to the water. Within weeks, the sightings increased, but the lights stopped just watching. They started attacking. The locals called them Chupa-Chupa, vampire lights, the sucker. No one knew what they were. UAPs, before we even had that term. No one knew where they came from, but everyone on the island would soon learn what they wanted. Dr. Waleed Carvalho was the island's only doctor. She treated farmers' accidents, fishing injuries, animal bites. Nothing prepared her for what walked through her door that first night. A woman, mid-30s, terrified. Carvalho had seen injuries before, but not like this. Not marks she couldn't explain. Burns on her chest, perfect circles. Inside each circle, puncture marks grouped together like needle holes. The woman described what happened. She was in bed when the ceiling began to glow orange, not like fire, like something was burning through from the other side. Then the ceiling shimmered. She could see stars through it, but the opening was wavy, like looking through water. Colored lights appeared. They hit the left side of her chest. Then paralysis, complete. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. She felt her blood being pulled from her body. Dr. Cavallo dismissed it as trauma, shock, hallucination. Then the second victim came in. Same burns, same puncture marks, same story. By the end of the week, she treated 40 patients, all identical injuries, all identical accounts. She ordered blood tests. Every single victim had severe anemia, iron deficiency. But here's what made no sense. There was no external bleeding, no wounds deep enough to cause that kind of blood loss. So the question wasn't if something was taking their blood. The question was how. Something was extracting blood directly from their bodies through those puncture marks, biological effects unlike anything in medical literature. The marks were too small for any needle she knew, too precise, too deliberate. One victim, a fisherman named Jose, tried to fight back. The next night, he barricaded his door, nailed the window shut. He sat in the dark with a hunting rifle, waiting. The light came through the wall anyway, not breaking through, just appearing, like the wall wasn't there. The beam hit his chest. He fired at it. The bullets passed through the light like it wasn't solid. Then paralysis took him. He couldn't pull the trigger again. By morning, he had new puncture marks, new anemia, new scars. Jose never fished again. He left the island 2 weeks later. That's when the island understood. There was no defense. But understanding the threat wasn't the same as surviving it. The attacks continued, night after night, and with each night the hunters learned more about their prey. The island transformed into a prison of fear. Fishermen refused to go out. The boats sat empty on the shore. Farmers abandoned their fields. The economy collapsed. Half the residents fled. Those who stayed lit bonfires every night. They set off fireworks, hoping to scare the lights away. Some fired hunting rifles at them. Nothing worked. The lights weren't afraid. They kept coming. 2 victims died. Official cause? Unknown. Dr. Cavallo begged the mayor for help. He called the Air Force. His island was under attack. People were hurt. 2 were dead. The Air Force promised to send investigators. The mayor exploded. He didn't want investigators. He wanted fighter jets, missiles. He wanted these things destroyed. The officer on the phone wasn't surprised by the mayor's description. He had heard it all before. A special unit arrived the next day. The mayor stood at the dock, hoping for fighter jets, missiles, soldiers with orders to destroy. Instead, he got cameras. Target unknown. Captain Uyrangê Hollanda's team arrived with telescopes, infrared sensors, high-speed cameras. They set up observation posts along the beach, rotating shifts, 24-hour surveillance. This was Operation Saucer, Operação Prato, the Brazilian military's response to what they considered a genuine national security threat. The military told local media this was routine. The UFO rumors were just that, rumors. The lights were probably birds, planes, satellites. Hollanda expected mass hysteria, poor farmers seeing things they didn't understand, satellites, birds, swamp gas, the usual explanations. Night 1 changed everything. Then the lights appeared. Just after midnight, objects performing maneuvers no aircraft could replicate. They hovered silently, then accelerated faster than anything Hollanda had ever seen. He was an experienced pilot. He knew what planes could do. This wasn't that. The question wasn't what these objects were anymore. The question was whether the military had any way to stop them. Hollanda felt his stomach tighten. The team tracked them, diving into Morro Bay at impossible speeds. No splash, no wake. Minutes later, the same objects appeared over the jungle behind them. It was like they were being herded, tested, watched. Hollanda began to recognize patterns. The objects moved from water to jungle to villages, always in formation, always deliberate. This wasn't random. Something intelligent was operating them. The attacks continued while the team documented everything. Hollanda watched through night vision as a woman tried to hide in her home. The light found her anyway. It came through the wall, not breaking through, just appearing inside, like the wall wasn't there. The beam struck her chest. She collapsed, paralyzed. The light hovered over her, methodical, scanning, like it was analyzing her. Hollanda felt his stomach turn. This wasn't observation. This was harvesting. Other lights appeared over the team's camp, hovering, watching them back. Hollanda tested it. He moved the camp 3 miles down the coast. The lights followed. Every time they set up an ambush, the lights were already waiting behind them. The hunter had become the hunted. Electromagnetic interference became constant. Compasses spun wildly whenever the objects appeared. Radio equipment failed. Even their military-grade tracking devices malfunctioned. Hollanda brought in Sergeant Milton Monona, a filmmaker with access to experimental ultraviolet film. Standard cameras were useless. Every frame came back overexposed, pure white, like trying to photograph the sun. The team had 500 photographs of nothing. Hollanda stared at the white frames, frustrated. They were there. He'd seen them with his own eyes, but the cameras couldn't prove it. Then Monona suggested something different. What if they weren't trying to photograph the lights themselves? What if they photographed what was inside the lights? The new technique worked. The photos revealed solid shapes hidden within the glow. cylindrical objects with black bands along their hulls. Some over 300 feet long, bigger than a 747. Smaller probes detached from the larger craft. They'd descend, conduct what looked like surveillance missions, then return to the mothership. After 4 months, the team had assembled over 2,000 pages of classified documents, 500 photographs, 16 hours of film, evidence of a military horror unlike anything in the historical record. Hollanda believed they were close to understanding the phenomena. The patterns were clear. The capabilities were documented. They could predict appearances with increasing accuracy. He sent his reports to the Regional Air Command, detailed, thorough, undeniable. The response came within hours. A brigadier general, new orders. Surrender all photos, all footage, all documents. Everything is now classified. Shut it down. The team packed up. Operation Prato ended in December 1977. Hollanda asked why. They were making progress. They had evidence. The general's answer was brief. There are things you don't need to know. Before leaving, Hollanda noticed something. 2 men in military uniforms he didn't recognize. Not Brazilian Army, not Navy, not Air Force. Foreign advisors, Americans. They were loading boxes into a truck. Boxes labeled with the Operation Prato designation. The films, the medical protocols, the witness reports. Everything was going north. The price of disclosure. The attack stopped after the military left, almost as if the presence of documentation was a goal all along. The Air Force's official statement, nothing extraordinary was found. 20 years of silence followed. 20 years of Hollanda waking up with the implant still moving under his skin. 20 years of knowing what he'd seen and being unable to tell anyone. 20 years of watching the world ask for disclosure, while the evidence sat in a classified vault. This was decades before David Grush, decades before whistleblowers could testify to Congress. This was the original age of disclosure, and it got a man killed. Then, in 1997, something broke inside of him. Maybe it was age, maybe it was the end of the dictatorship, maybe it was the weight of the secret finally becoming too heavy to carry. He was retired now, lieutenant colonel, no longer bound by active duty. He picked up the phone and called A.J. Javard of Brazilian UFO magazine. For 2 days he told everything. The objects, the patterns, the cover-ups, the Americans loading trucks with evidence that belonged to Brazil. But then Javard asked the question that changed everything. Did anything happen to you? Hollanda went quiet. He described a night in his own home, late, a crack like an electrical surge, a flash of light, paralysis. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. A being at the end of his bed, just under 5 feet tall, gray mask. He couldn't see its face. Another flash. It was over. His wife slept through the entire thing. The next day, driving back to the base, his forearm itched, red, inflamed. Something moved under his skin when he pressed it. Small, flexible. X-rays couldn't detect it. But a compass could. He showed Javard during the interview. The implant was still there. Captain Uyrangê Hollanda was the first true whistleblower of the age of disclosure. He broke the silence before it was safe, before it was acceptable, before David Grush, before Congress hearings. But breaking the silence meant breaking the rules, and there were people who enforced the rules. The military, the Americans, the government. Maybe all of them. 2 months later, before the article was even published, Captain Uyrangê Hollanda was found dead in his apartment, ruled a suicide, hung with a bathroom belt. We ask for disclosure. We demand the truth. We want whistleblowers to come forward. But history shows that when the truth finally comes out, it usually costs a life. This is the true story they don't want you to know. We ask for disclosure, and we demand the truth. But history shows that when the truth finally comes out, it usually costs a life. Was Captain Hollanda the first casualty of this secret war, or just the first one we know about? The world waits for disclosure, like it's coming tomorrow. It already came, 40 years ago, and we killed the man who tried to tell us. Is the world ready for what Captain Hollanda saw in Colares, Brazil? Or will we keep on killing the messengers? This is the age of disclosure, but disclosure has always had a price. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more untold stories the government doesn't want you to hear. The truth is out there. It always has been.